Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Shamit Khemka of SynapseIndia. And Shamit, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other great episodes of the podcast. And since you've been an EO for many, many years, you've headed up some of the, actual city for EO and been the president. So there's some other EO podcasts to check out. I've met Zolk, who is in EO Tulsa. I had Oren Klopper, who is in EO South Africa. I had Ethan King, the co-founder of Zeus's Closet in EO Atlanta, and just all over it's all over the world, all over the country. And David Anderson of Off Madison Avenue. Just a few of I can go on and on, but all of them are amazing interviews, and they talk about their journey and some great business lessons there. So check those out. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a business to launch and run their podcast. We do strategy, accountability, and full execution of everything. So, Shamit, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. And I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that than to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should go to rise25.com. You have questions, email us. And actually, that's what, first, Shamit and I met through EO, and someone was looking for a recommendation. And I went out searching in my EO network who would be good to refer, and that's how we met. And so hopefully I was able to refer him some business if that happens, and or maybe in the future, regardless. So just formally introduce Shamit Khemka as the founder of SynapseIndia, is a premier IT outsourcing company, and SynapseIndia provides software development and custom web mobile applications. They have customers throughout the world, with most in the USA, UK, Australia, and Canada. Their focus is open source frameworks and e-commerce. They're also a Microsoft certified gold partner. And over the last 23 plus years, the company successfully delivered over 10,000 projects with such clients as 3M, Steve Madden, IBM, Johnson & Johnson, and of course, EO. And Shamit, thanks for joining me.
I'm looking forward to it, Jeremy.
You have an incredible journey, and we're going to talk about it because we even talked, before we hit record, of you starting an email service back in, I think was it 93? What year was it?
Yeah, 94.
94. So we'll go back to you've always been ahead of your time here, but talk about SynapseIndia and what you do a little bit first.
Sure. So we started this journey, SynapseIndia, in 1999. This was born out of failed.com that was called Sampatti.com. So we tried to replicate one of the real estate models that we'd seen in the US, successful models in the US, in India, but it was far ahead of its time, especially for our country at that point. And it sort of went belly up within a few months. And then, we had some computers left, some great programmers, and we said, what can we do? And I'd done some websites for companies, corporates in east of India before moving to Delhi. So I said, let's give this a try. Let's do websites. Let's do web-based software, and that's where SynapseIndia really took off. And we had a slow organic growth for the first few years. And but it was fun. It was always cash positive, so we never had to reach out and borrow any money, which was a great. I like to fund myself as much as I can, so that was good. And then I joined EO after crossing that 1 million threshold that EO requires in the year 2006, and from there, we just grew very rapidly, very, very quickly, very rapidly. And I think, if there's one thing in EO that really helped That was the MIT program, which was earlier called Birthing of Giants, now called Entrepreneurs Masters Program. So I attended that program for 3 years and then came back and actually tried to replicate that program in India with the Indian School of Business. We ran that for 3 years as well, almost 60 people in each batch. And these 6 years were very instrumental in growth.
I want to we'll talk about the evolution of your services for a second, but I want to go back to, because you kind of casually say, we went belly up. And at the time, it's traumatizing, I'm sure. Looking back, you can kind of go, oh, we've grown so much. But at the time, you say we went belly up. You could have just gone out and gotten a job. But it sounded like, I don't know, what was your mindset and thinking around that of how you just bounced and you're like, hey, we'll use our stuff and what we have and we'll start again, right? What were you thinking at the time when it went under, essentially?
So I think age is always a huge factor. I was young. I was, 26 at that time. So it was easy and, it was a risk worth taking. So that's one. Second, like you mentioned, I'd been in technology since the year 1994. So I did have the confidence that we can try and build something afresh and, bootstrap a technology company. So that definitely played in the mind. And luckily for us, while we were running the .com, we still had a lot of inquiries coming our way. So this was nascent days of internet commerce in India. So we had a lot of inquiries coming our way. Well, can you help us with website? Can you help us with setting up some sort of a commerce online? So things like that. So we knew that there was a demand. We knew that there is a growing set of engineers in India. So that's something that we can, create and take it further. So that's what we did.
Is there something that you think about internally to bounce back? Because even though you're seeing inquiries, you're seeing some positive responses, when you say belly up, how do you bounce back? Maybe today, and maybe there's still things that happen in the business. How do you kind of just get past those things in your own mind?
So I think the reinforcement that inherently there is demand. That's one. Second, the belief in oneself that we can accomplish something that we are passionate about. So I've always been very, very passionate about technology. So I knew that I can create and I can take technology and make a successful business. And third, I think support of family. That's very important. And we were young. I had one kid who was 6 months old, so there wasn't too much to be spent on that front in terms of education or home didn't demand much at that point. So it was easy. It was easy to try this out, and luckily it was successful.
What did your family say about you going out starting your own business? Because I think back then, I don't think entrepreneurship is as sexy as it is now. What was it like then? Discussions with the family, it's like, hey, I'm going to go out and start my own business.
So we come from a community in India called Marwaris. Marwaris are so most businesses in India till the year I would say 1980s, 1990s were run by Marwari families. So it's traditionally been a very business oriented community, and I think they would have been very disappointed if I hadn't tried to do something myself. So they would rather have me do something and fail rather than get a job and not even try doing something myself. And I'll say that I'll say the same thing for my children. So 2 daughters and a son, and I would like them to at least give it a shot. Try for a few years. If they can't make it, then they get a job. That's fine. But at least they should try.
Let's talk about, because a lot of companies, they don't end up doing what they started doing, right? And even the agency world. So it started off as this company in the web world that went belly up, and then you were getting inquiries for web development. What was more, if you continue on the evolution of your services, what was next?
So the first came simple websites and hosting. So that was the first thing that we started off with. Then came web-based software. So we started developing small software that would uh, pale in comparison to what is achievable now. It's probably something that you can get off a SaaS model for $1 or $2, ready to use as of now. So we started with those, and then we actually did some very interesting projects. There was actually a company based in the US who had its franchisees in India, and they were using if I can call it a ERP, their backend system was on Clipper and DBase. And they wanted to build a web-based front end which would connect to that for their dealers. And we were successful in creating a module which would extract data out of the DBase and present it on the web. So that was it was quite ahead of its time. And, so we did a lot of, there's an Indian word. It's a very common word in India, especially in North India, called jugaad. I don't know if you've heard of that before. So, jugaad is, and it's really difficult to really explain. It's like when you see somebody who's taken a diesel generator that generates electricity and put it in front of three wheels and made a car out of it, so that in the evening it'll give him electricity and the day it'll help him ride to the city. That's what is jugaad. And so Indians are very good at jugaad, and Indians are typically born entrepreneurs, the way I'd like to see it. So that allowed us to find solutions where none existed. So at that point in 1999, 2000, 2001, these solutions for connecting your backend to the web didn't really exist in India. So we were able to do that jugaad and come up with those solutions. So that was fun. It was really exciting at that point.
And then what about is the IT outsourcing?
So IT outsourcing, slowly and steadily, we started moving, between technology, between solutions that we offered. So, going from web to mobile applications. So the first EO application was built by me in the year 2007 or 2008, I think. At that point, I was on the EO technology committee, and we used to keep talking about how difficult it is to access the database, to search for members and such. And there was obviously no mobile app at that point. So I took on myself to hire a mobile application developer, got him to connect to the API on the EO website, and develop this app, which is still functional even now. If you search for EO Global, you'll find it. And so that was the first mobile application project that we ever did. And since it was successful and since people started using it, we said, hey, why don't we get into mobile development as well? And that's where the mobile division took off. And we now have about 35 people just doing mobile applications. It's all been evolving organically.
I talked about some of the clients you've had, in the US and across the world: 3M, IBM, Microsoft, Audi, PayPal, Steve Madden. There's different stigmas around using Indian, based companies, right? So I'd love for you to talk about that. How do you overcome that? We were talking before we hit record is sometimes people view it as cheap labor.
And it's inexpensive, no doubt. I mean, it is less expensive than many other countries. But the way I would set us apart is one. A lot of people don't understand that we actually have probably one of the better spoken and written English in the world. So we probably speak better English, or more sort of fluent English than the English themselves at this point. I don't know if you've heard, English speak nowadays, that the British speak nowadays. So that's one. And second, the talent, the ability or the availability of talent in India is huge. It's immense. We are a country of 140 million people, and I would say there would be at least 1 million great engineers in the country. So we have immense talent, and to waste it away by not exploring the software industry would have been a shame. So I'm glad that, the earlier entrepreneurs in India 30, 35 years back started software as an industry in India, and, we contribute to it. I think where we come in is just the ability to scale, which I don't think any other country has in terms of manpower in the technology field. So that's where we excel. And fast learning, fast adapting, jugaad, like I mentioned, is a huge talent for Indians. So that really sets us apart. And typically, the downside is that we don't know how to say no. That's a huge challenge for most Indians. So even in our company, when we onboard people, we have to teach them it's all right to say no. When we can't do something. So yeah.
Talk about objections. So when you're initiating conversation with a US based company, what are some of the objections that you get?
So I think the biggest downside is the time zone. So the time zone is always something that people try and compare us to Mexico or Colombia or even Philippines to that matter. But luckily for us, the way I see it is uh, we sort of overlap 3.5 to 4 hours with the East Coast and a couple of hours with the West Coast on the other side of the day. So that allows us to be in sufficient communication with our customers, understand, or deliberate on a project in a collaborative way, and then work ourselves. So, software is not something that necessarily needs collaboration at all times. There's to and fro, but that can be achieved, and then a person can sit and do the work themselves after that. So I think we have that advantage where we have a few hours of overlap and we make the best of it. But that is something that most people worry about when outsourcing. And the second is communication. Like I mentioned, most people don't realize that India is, most people in India, English is almost their first language because they are educated in it. So most of our education is in English. So you'll rarely find engineers that don't know how to communicate in English. Software engineers, yeah.
Any other objections you get, business wise or culture wise?
Not really. I think culturally we are very, very adaptable people. So I don't think we get any objections culturally, but business wise, maybe for the initial years that we started off, there was always a stigma to can we send money abroad? Would it be safe? Will the work actually get delivered? So that was always a question. But as you build, the repository of sort of portfolio, as you create that, will in the market, then I think those questions sort of disappear.
Yeah, it's a trust thing. Once they understand you're reputable, I mean, that goes with across any country, culture, it's always a trust thing. Is this company trustworthy and can deliver what they say they can deliver? I want to talk about, this is a very people-centric business. So I'd love to talk about recruiting and hiring and some of the things you found as best practices or big mistakes as far as recruiting and hiring goes.
So recruiting and hiring has always been the toughest thing in our industry. Since day one, attrition has always plagued this industry. It's primarily because we've grown really fast, particularly in India, especially in the last 15 years and of late the last 4-5 years between COVID and after COVID. So that's always been a huge challenge. I think for me, the one game changer was this program in the MIT batch where they had top grading. So that really helped us improve our recruiting processes, create sort of process-oriented recruitment rather than just subjective. So it became very objective compared to a whole lot of subjectivity. So that really helped.
By the way, I'll just
of
mention
HR,
really quickly, Shamit, I had the CEO of Top Grading, Chris Mersal, on the podcast. So you could check out that episode. And that's what their book is about. That's what they do, is talk about how do you hire and attract and retain A-list A players? So,
Correct.
so keep
So
going.
we had Brad Smart in our class teaching us about top trading. So that was wonderful, from the horse's mouth. So that was really wonderful. And I think that really helped. And then along with that, of course, we adapted. The forum in EO really helps because you learn from best practices of your peers, of different other industries and verticals. So that really helped in terms of understanding what other companies are doing to retain best talent and even recruit best talent.
So what has worked for you from a retention standpoint?
As of now, right now, I mean, if you ask me, it's been a huge challenge after COVID. Everything is just gone topsy turvy because people have left en masse. IT companies, we've had the IT industry is just going through a huge lot of turmoil. So what had worked in the past is definitely not working right now. But I think it's a balance. It's going to come back. There will be some sort of sanity to this soon enough. But it has been very, very challenging in the last year and a half. We lost a lot of people who'd been with us for 15, 20 years, in fact. So that was a huge challenge that we had to overcome. So we had to strengthen our processes more. We had to be less people dependent. So that was, good learning. And I think we are changing how we work to some extent based on that.
How do you explain that? Because it's happening across many industries, but how do you explain, someone's been with a company for 15 years, that's a long time.
It is indeed. And, it's interesting because I recently met a huge MNC who's mostly into manufacturing in India. And their timeline for most employees is 5 to 7 years. They literally just hire with a mindset that the employee is going to be there for 5 to 7 years and give the best in those years. And then they're not looking for something longer term than that. Whereas I guess I'm a little old fashioned that way. I like to, grow with the employees. I like to grow, the business around them. So that has been particularly challenging due to COVID and the attrition that came after COVID. But I think I would like to stick to that. I wouldn't want to change that entirely. Although we have moved a lot of our processes, like things that we can, for example, using Chat GPT for a few of our copywriting and portfolio management and things like that. We have a lot of objective HR processes versus which things that were very subjective in the past. So we've tried to accommodate with time and try and be lean and mean when it comes to employees, primarily because it's tough to really recruit at this point.
What has worked in the past, Shamit? Because retaining staff members for 20 years is pretty darn good, right? So what has worked?
You've asked me that question again, so I'm going to come out with the.
I know there's something in there.
So this,
you're being modest. Don't be modest with me.
No, we were innovating. We were trying to find things or solutions that were a little different than what we had seen in the industry. So, for example, and I'll give you two examples. We have something called loyalty leaves and loyalty bonus. Now, what we came up with is that for each year that the employee had been with us, we would give them an additional day apart from the mandatory statutory needs. So at the end of 10 years, an employee would get 10 extra days off in a year. So that was one. Along with that, we had a lot of incentives to take a holiday, a paid holiday with additional incentive for your anniversary, for your birthday, for kids when they were born. So, we would incentivize people to take off and also send them on holidays together and things like that. So that really worked initially. That changed during COVID, I think, but at least till COVID, it worked brilliantly. Then the loyalty bonus is something that we came up with way back in 2005, where we said for each year that you had been with the business, we would pay an extra amount per month. So if you've been for longer, it became quite a considerable amount, and we were paying that out uh, each month to employees who've been with us for 15, 20 years. So that added like a nice bonus packet, and at the end of each month instead of the end of the year and things like that. So that really helped. We also came up with the industry first, like complete medical insurance, which is not typical in India. A lot of things like that. Innovative things like that.
I love it. Thank you. I knew it was in you. I knew you have it. So I appreciate you sharing that. From the standpoint of companies you've worked with, right? You've worked with some incredible companies, like I mentioned, 3M, IBM, Steve Madden. Do you remember the first one that you were especially proud of? Like, wow, we made it, from a standpoint of we're really attracting some amazing companies.
And I think so. We worked with some large companies before, but I think the one that I'm definitely the most proud of is EO. Having worked with EO, being a member of EO, understanding the a sense of the organization, and then we maintained the original website since 2010 to even now. We do some maintenance work for EO, so that's definitely been something that we are very proud of, and that logo goes up first and foremost with any client logo that we put up.
Love it. And I was reading an email from you the other day, and in the signature area, there's a quote from Steve Madden in there.
Correct.
The team's very professional. I would 100% recommend it to anyone that looks for a solid partnership for their e-commerce projects or mobile apps. What kind of work did you do with Steve Madden?
So we still run and maintain a lot of their e-commerce portals, and we work with their backend as well. So they have an ERP system that we integrate and we run with the Shopify store. So we work with the Australia team, we work with the South Africa team, we work with Middle East now. We just recently completed the project for Middle East. They partnered with a third party. So the way that Middle East is structured is that they need to have a local partner there. So they partnered with somebody locally there, and we just completed the site for them as well on Shopify.
You worked with, and if you're watching the video, you can see right now, I'm on the SynapseIndia.com website. So if you want to learn more about what they do, what they're working on, you can go to SynapseIndia.com. And there's also, a case study page where they kind of walk through some of the things that they've done. But I want to talk about one of the ones you helped was an oncology lab.
Correct.
What'd you do with them?
See, oncology lab is also incidentally owned by EO member. And so they reached out to us right when COVID had, I think 6 months into COVID, and the government of India had mandated certain reporting through their COVID site. So you had to run through the COVID website to verify the proximity alerts and things like that. And they had these two lab machines which didn't talk to each other, two completely different manufacturer-based machines, and they needed to consolidate these reports and run it through the API of the government website. Now, that entire process was taking them several days at a time to do. So we were able to create a robotic process. So we used RPA, Unipath, as the backend, and we were able to automate that entire process of getting the reports from both the lab machines, consolidating it, checking it against the government, COVID website, and then producing the PDF that would go out to the end consumer.
Shopify seems like a popular request from you and the company. You also worked with Pure Cosmetics.
100% Pure, yeah.
What did you do with them?
So we run and maintain their Shopify sites as well. So we do a little bit of e-commerce marketing for them. We do coding in terms of the apps that they have on the Shopify website. We do some backend maintenance. We do a lot of creatives for them. So they basically are D2C, direct to consumer brand. So we do a lot of their social media, their branding, things like that.
What have you seen as mistakes people make? You've obviously, I mentioned, over 10,000 projects. What do mistakes people make with their Shopify or e-commerce site?
I guess the one mistake that I see a lot of people making is trying to build something custom when there are modules or ready-made software which is available. So the advantage of ready-made, and especially if it is by Shopify themselves, if there are modules that are available, then they are a little more faster, more efficient, and you don't have to go through the rigmarole of any kind of testing and things like that. So I would always encourage people to pick and choose from what is available and plug and play rather than build custom apps. But every once in a while, we have to build something custom because the checkout requires it, or some sort of functionality that is not available on Shopify or plugins. So,
What are your favorite Shopify plugins? Do any
I
come to mind?
probably won't be able to answer that question, but I know that we've built a few plugins like loyalty. So we've created loyalty plugins ourselves, which we freely distribute to our customers. So when they have us develop a Shopify site, we give that free of cost. And then there's a couple of other checkout integrations with 3PL, third-party logistics that we built for ourselves.
So most of the custom plugins, you would say, you don't make them readily available on the Shopify app, so people can't get them. They can't, because a lot of them, there's a subscription, obviously. But if someone hires you, then you will actually deploy the custom ones that you've built.
So the custom ones that we built are very niche, and that's the reason why we haven't put it up on the store. But more often than not, customers also come to us for their own requirement, which is then their intellectual property. So we will build that app and we'll hand it over to them, and then we don't have access to those custom builds.
That makes sense. Speaking of apps, Sonify.
So Sonify was very interesting. So Sonify was an interesting client. So Sonify initially had come to us to build an app for hotels, and they were using the app for guest rooms where you could control your TV and control other amenities using the app. And then they later pivoted to health. So if you search for Sonify Health app, you'll find it where it's now deployed in about 135,000 rooms across hospitals across the US. And the app actually allows pretty much maintaining all your technology in the room in terms of the television, calling for any kind of support, or, ordering meals, your schedules in terms of medicines and other activities. So things like that.
Shamit, I have one last question. Before I ask it, I just want to point people to check out your website and to learn more. You can go to SynapseIndia.com to learn more about what they're working on there. And the last question I have is about leadership. You lead a pretty large team, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. What's worked for you as far as leadership? What maybe mistakes should other people avoid as they grow a larger team from leadership perspective?
So most of my learning has been from other peers, right? I mean, whether it be in EO or other organizations that I've interacted with. So I've had, a lot of learning that I've got from them, and I can just share some of those, in the brief time that we have. So one thing that I know really helped us is that we would relook at our processes, our systems, our technology every 5 years. So that really helped, because as we grow as an organization from 5 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, things change, and we need to relook at technologies and the backends that we are using. So that is something that we did very diligently every 5 years, and that really helped, especially when COVID hit India. Most of our technology, most of our servers were online on the cloud, so we were able to escape, doing too much of micromanagement at that time. So that's one. Apart from that, I would say having outsourced a lot of our activities, such as so we before COVID we had lunch catered in the office for everyone. So we would outsource anything that was not inherent to our business. So anything that wasn't really actual activity for our business, we would outsource. So that's something that I strongly believe in, that let's not try and get into every kind of activity in our business. And third is, as a policy, we at least till COVID, and now again, we would have one retreat each year where we would invite the entire office. So everyone was invited, and a couple of them was even with the families, and different places each time. We'd do driving distances from Delhi, like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours away from Delhi, where we would hire big buses and cars, and just take the employees out for a good time, and do some activities there, fun activities, sports, things like that. So that's really worked well for us.
First of all, I wanted the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, expertise, and journey. Everyone should check out SynapseIndia.com, and thanks again.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.